everybody, and thank you for joining us once again on the Find the Dash podcast. We appreciate you so much taking time out to join us. And we've finally got our video back going. We are in a different studio, as you can see. We're here at the church. And but as you can also see, I do have guests today, so you're not just listening to me ramble. So things have improved. Things are looking up on the podcast. And so thank you for joining us once again. As you can see, I have my co-host today is Brother Mitch Bostic. We appreciate him. Everybody back in Radio Land giving him a clap. Yeah. And we also have special guests today. As you know, we always try to talk about our heroes of the faith and everything of that nature. And so today we have not only my friend and hero, Brother Mitch, but we have my friend, my hero, my mentor, my dad, Brother Billy Clifton. And so we're going to share his testimony today. And we sure hope that you'll be blessed with that. And so, guys, thank you so much for joining us, taking time out today
to be
here
here
in the studio with us.
Hope we can be a help.
And Brother Mitch has been here on the podcast with us before, sharing his testimony. And I think he actually co-hosted an episode or two, didn't you? Or was it just the episode with your testimony? Just that one. And Dad, you was here with when we did the Key Mountain Brothers, our original episodes. And so thank you both for being back. And I want to say thank you to everybody that has listened to those episodes. Those episodes have done really well as far as that goes. And again, as I've told you in previous episodes, we wouldn't be able to do this without listeners. It would just be me going back and listening when I'm editing. And so it would get old really quick. But thank you all for listening, for joining us. And may God bless you for the time that you spend with us. So first off, Dad, instead of calling you Brother Bill like I would anybody else, I'm just going to go with Dad. Because that's
That'd be fine.
brother, dad, amigo.
That sounds better. That sounds better.
We are informal here, so to speak. And so what, for all the listeners out there, Dad, can you share a little bit of your testimony on what your upbringing was like? What was, did you get to go to church very often, and a little bit of what your life was like as a young man?
Well, Chad, when I was little, when I was young, or growing up, my mom and dad didn't go to church. And where they didn't go to church, naturally, they didn't take us kids to church. Right. So I didn't know a thing about it. I really didn't. I didn't know what they did at church. I've always heard, there was a God, but I more or less didn't know if he was real or what and all God could do. So there I was. And then there was some people that's got a church up on the mountain there, what's called a Wilderness Tabernacle now. And that live on, most of the people live on up in the holler around me or different hollers, but they go to church up on the mountain or Horn Mountain. And there was this man named Clifton. He used to see me walking beside the road, I guess out in my meanness and doing things. And boy, he'd be driving a church van, Mitch, and he'd come by there and he'd stop. Hey, Clifton boy, he said, won't you go to church with us tonight? We have young people's meeting, and we have games like Bible scrambles, things like that. He said, won't you go? I looked at him, I said, I don't even have a Bible. He said, if you go with me next week, I'll take care of that. As far as I know, I never did ever really have a Bible hardly in my hands. I mean, I didn't know nothing about it. So after a week was over with, I kind of just put it on, said he won't invite me no more. Lo and behold, buddy, he come got me. And I went to church. Well, I went up there, I went inside, I sat down in that great old big church, and those people there, I know their faces, know some of their names, some of them I didn't. And, but I sat there, and we played games, Bible scrambles, where you look up verses, somebody call out, like John 3:16, and whoever could read that verse first, where it be the men's side or the women's, then they would get points. And at the end of a month's term or something like that, then they'd get a free Bible or something. Well, I went there, and there was a man sitting there playing the guitar, Raymond Davis, Brother Raymond Davis.
Great man.
And to me, I started watching him, play that guitar and sing. Mitch and I always wanted to play guitar and sing. Got my first guitar when I think it was 11 years old. Picked it up, laid it down 2 or 3 times. But when I was about 13, I started finally knowing enough chords and playing a little bit. But Raymond would tune my guitar. I even took it up there a few times, and he'd tune it. And him and Jesse May would sing. And I enjoyed that. And really, to be honest with you, Jessie May was like another mommy to me. And she's a sweet lady. And she really, to this day, I can go there, or she'll come down here, she sees me, she said, "There's my young'un." And I can't help it but run up and hug her. She was really an inspiration that got me started in church. And
she still hugs me and says, "There's my boy."
That's the way she does me. And like I said, I really didn't know what went on in church, but they started taking prayer requests, praying for people. Even me at times, if I was sick or something, they would say something about me, and I'll never forget that. And to me, my upbringing, I didn't really have an upbringing in church. So those out there in their neighborhoods, their families and loved ones, if they had an opportunity to go to church when they was young, they really just don't know how blessed they really are. And I wished I had that opportunity and got to church sooner. But basically, that's about what happened to me. And I wondered, Jessie May's love for me, what she showed me. I've often thought ever since, I went up here a while back and slipped in the back of the church because I made a promise that I would come one night. I sat in the back. Boy, when she looked around and saw me and she was sitting up front, she went, jumped up and come back there and got me and hugged me right there in front of everybody. She treated me like family. And I often wondered during that time, could God's love be like that? Would he take us back? Would he hug us? Would he show us how much he loves us, just like she did?
Right.
And I learned after I got saved, yes, he will.
That's right. A little bit of love goes a long way. And that's one thing about, I tried to say, I believe it was on the last episode that we did, as Christians, love is what we should be showing. We shouldn't be showing anger. We shouldn't be showing bitterness, because people that are looking for something else, they're going to see that in this world. And they're looking for something different. And so, a little bit of love, like you said, is going to go a long ways. And you haven't forgotten that now. And probably what age was you when Boone stopped and was?
Oh, I'd say, let me tell my age now.
Many moons ago.
Many moons ago. I would have had to be someplace between 10 and 15, maybe, somewhere in there.
Before the flood. Now, so you was 10 years old to 15 years old when you started going to some of these kids' crusades or youth nights and going to church with Boone.
That was just a few times.
Right.
Very few times.
Just a few times. At what point was it, or how old was you, and how did it come about when you actually got saved and gave your heart to God?
Chad, I went up here to Webb's Chapel, 1977.
And now you can tell the reason. We know. Some of us know.
Well, Mitch, I stood outside of that chimney and peeked through a window. That's where I met my wife at. I just let go. And
what better place to find?
I'll agree with you. I agree with you. I don't regret it. I don't regret it. And I tell you what, I would rather find a good old Christian girl anytime. And be it all, where I didn't know nothing really about church or anything. I was unlearned. And guess what? She talked me in going inside and sitting with us. If you're going to talk to me, then you're going to have to come here and sit with me. Guess what? Yeah. I did. And I went in there. Lord works mysterious ways. And I probably stayed saved about 2.5 years or so then. And then some things happened. I let things bother me. Things that happened in church. And I was letting the things that I saw with human eyes bother me more than the spiritual things of God. I mean, I say, but we all get hurt sometimes. But we need to put our trust and hope in God and not in man. And I learned that on down the road. But so there I was, and I got out of church, but I could not. I'd experienced something. I can't understand it. I can't explain it. But I do know this. Even those 2 years, maybe, or whatever, how long it was, I was out of church. Well, you might as well say it. I was a backslider. You remember, Chad, when you and Chris were little, I would still make you all go to church. I would take you up there, Elmer Hilton's. I would sit outside the churches over with, and I'd be there to pick you up and bring you back. And every night, before I go to sleep, there was enough of the fear of God in my life to where I would still pray and ask God to give me another chance to make things right and work things out to where, I could feel His goodness and His greatness. But I would always say every night, I said, God, you bound to be real or I wouldn't be feeling like this. And I would take you all to church. And if you remember, I would tell you and your mommy and everybody, I said, hey, if I don't go, don't you worry about me. You go. I'm taking you. And that's what happened. So along about 1981, 1982, somewhere in there.
I wasn't born until 82. Now I'm not. I was post-flood.
Well, I guess I messed that up, and it was just Chris. But anyway, there was a revival going on up there, and there was a good friend of mine, Brother Stuart Cole, was preaching a revival there. And guess what? I went in there, and I took it about as long as I could take it. I went back to an old-fashioned altar during that revival. And then they took me up there at the old Richlands Tabernacle or in that lower end there in the river. Took me out there at the tabernacle, Richlands Tabernacle, and baptized me there in the river. I'll never forget that. But that's where and how I actually got saved was then. And I've been doing my best to live a good life ever since. God will still take you back.
Yes, He will. And I actually was just talking last Wednesday night to one of Brother Stuart Cole's grandsons. And we were actually talking about Brother Stuart preaching when you got saved and him baptizing you.
What?
And so give you a shout out, Schuler boys. Yeah. But, it is great to see some great young men following in a great line of ministry and of godliness. And so, if they're listening, give them a shout out to the Schuler family. Great.
Yes.
Folks. And so now you was talking about you went to the church that night the first time, and when you was meeting Mom.
I was peeping through a window.
When you went to window wash, and so.
Oh boy, I'll get in trouble.
How old were you at that point? About 17, 18, or was you a little older than that?
I met your mom. I guess first time I really talked to her, March 20th, 1977.
She would be proud you remember those days.
because we got
She
married.
gave these dates before this, didn't she?
No, because we got married November the 4th, 1977.
That wasn't a very long date.
No,
Wow.
no, but I don't know. They was something special.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I was standing up there where Sonny's is now. It used to be Ike's Three-Way back then, back before you was born.
But yeah.
And I was standing there talking to some of my friends one time, and here she came. Her and one of her girlfriends she run around with. I guess it was after Sunday school one Sunday, and they drove up Condor. Didn't look at us, didn't wave or nothing. But they was something hit me inside. But they was something just moved this old boy to where I looked at somebody there. I don't remember who it was. That's been too long ago. And I said, "Who is that?" And they told me and where she went to church at. And they said, "Why?" I said, "They just something stuck out and something just sort of pricked me. Something just drawed me there." And I said, "And she goes to church up our Webb's Chapel?" I said, "Yeah." That was the reason I was standing outside, peeping through the window, getting a close-up look.
Yeah.
And we end up getting married there and everything.
Yeah. And so did you, the night that you went and was window shopping, did you get saved that night?
How you like that terminology?
Yeah. Hey, it's modern. It's modern day. We gotta. Did you get saved that night, or did you have to go back a few times and a few nights before you actually gave your heart to God?
No.
The first time there, or
not when I was standing outside against that old big chimney and peeping through the window. No, she eventually got me to come inside.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I, went back several times, I guess, during revivals. But there was something about the power of God, I believe conviction power was on me, because me to never experienced anything like that, just to be able to feel something heavenly.
Yeah.
Can I say it that way? Something heavenly.
That's right.
Drawing me. I just couldn't explain it. I mean, there I was, sitting beside a beautiful lady that I hoped one day would be my wife. And then there was something that was still wanting more of me.
Right.
And that was God.
That's right. Now, we do have another guest here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and embarrass him a little bit. We have Brother Colin here in the, we'll call it the green room out here in the chapel. Colin, do you want to be seen on camera? You want to say hi? Now, Brother Colin, now listening to this testimony here that Dad's given, if you start missing to visit other churches or peeping through windows, we're going to know what's going on.
Oh boy, I'm in trouble.
I'm just picking on him.
He's a fine young man.
Fine young man. Great kid. He's in my Sunday school class, and I tell you, he's a blessing to have around. He really is. And so, Brother Mitch, you got any questions so far? I don't want to be doing all the talking.
No, not so far. There may be a few things on that.
Okay, all right. So, Dad, you told us you went to church the first time when you was 10, 15 years old, early teens, and then you went back on your own when you was around. We said 21.
I was about
something like that.
I hadn't turned 21. I was still 20. Okay. I turned 21 September 25th.
For some reason, I kept thinking in my mind 17.
70.
I was thinking
77.
20,
yeah.
And so you gave your heart back to God. Then you was about 22. At what point, I guess, from there, were you feel the call to preach and into the ministry?
Well, that's kind of a long story. I felt the call, or felt the drawing. Now, keep in mind, I was unlearned. Didn't know nothing about it. But what time I was in church, from the time I got saved, I'd learned a lot. I started listening. I started reading the Bible. And I had desire to play and sing. And, but I know there was more to it than that. And about, I'm going to say 1987, somewhere around there. I was still, one of the original Key Mountain Brothers. And, I was with them probably 20-some years. One of the original, starters of it. And I always wondered why so many churches that we went to and things, they didn't even have pastors, some of them, where the pastors would leave. And God would move sometimes, and I felt something come over me, like, the Holy Ghost, move upon me. And next thing I know, I'd be shutting up more or less, and or sitting down or whatever. And I had several people, I could name off several people probably that would come over and said, Brother Bill, said, why ain't you obeying God? And said, God's got something in mind from you. And that's other preachers tell me that. I remember going to a church and preaching to a congregation, and the pastor got up, and this woman came up and prayed, and I didn't even know who she was. And that pastor came up bawling and crying, and he looked at me and he said, that's my wife.
Yeah.
She got cold on God. So that's my wife. But anyway, I didn't know if it was just me seeing the need for preachers, or was that all in Bill, or if it was God dealing with me. I questioned God about that, and then eventually I stood right outside those doors here in this church one cold day, and I talked to Brother Randy. I said, Brother Pastor, can I talk to you a few minutes? And he said, why, sure. And I told him the situation, told him how I felt like God was dealing with me, but I'm scared of this. I don't know how to react. I don't know what to do. Am I missing something here? Am I about to stick my foot in my mouth? Am I, making a mistake here? Am I missing something? And Brother Randy, he told me, he said, Brother Bill, I've noticed God been working and dealing with you. I've seen you sitting in church, and it looked like God was all over you. He said, tell you what we're going to do. Let's pray about it. And if it's God's intentions to call you out in the ministry, then God will do it. And I said, well, all right. So that went on in about 2.5 years later, March the 15th, 1989, I preached my first message over in Woozy Camp for Brother John Godley. Then later on, I was ordained in this church here, King Mountain. Brother Randy and John Godley ordained me. But what really got me started, I didn't even talk to Bill Houston, run into him when Bob Osmond's wife had passed away. Up there, I believe it was Her Scott, I believe is where we was at. And he looked at me and he said, God been dealing with you? You know how Brother Bill Houston was, something like that. We stand kind of down one of them hallways there. And I said, Brother Bill, how did God call you? And he was telling me about, it was as though he heard a little voice in the treetops, like a wind was a-blowing. And he said, well, you think God's really called you? I said, I don't know what's going on yet. But I guess try to shorten my story. We were singing up there, Brother Mike Roberts at the old Mill Branch Church up there, Sword Creek. And we was singing there one night, King Mountain Brothers, and as I was coming off the pulpit, I stepped down and walked by the front pews. There was a great old big hand, jumped out there and grabbed me by the arm and pulled me right down their face, Brother L.D. Moore. He looked at me, and I believe we almost rubbed noses. He looked at me, and I didn't know the guy. I mean, I knowed of him. But as far as friends, I speak to him stuff, but that's all I know. He looked at me and said, Brother, why ain't you doing what God called you to do? I looked at him. I went, bah, 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 and then he turned me loose and went back to that seat and went on like he never saw me, talking to everybody around him. It was like it was something heavenly.
Yeah.
It's like something heavenly worked through him. I don't know how to explain it. I don't. I really don't. But he put a fear of God in me. And then Then I told God, I said, God, if you have really called me to preach, would you give me that reassurance? Will you show me?
Yeah.
This old country boy, I said, I can't say a lot of my words right. I'm country, I'm hillbilly, and I've even had preachers' sons to make fun of me the way I said, flamin', in the Bible, I before I learned a few things, I called it fleeman or something, and they'd laugh at me, but I done the best I could, and but it's just like the word Philistine, Philistine or Philistine, Philistines. It depends if you look at the British translation or if you look at the English translation, And but me, I was probably in 8th grade before I could say my mother's name, Beulah. It was Beulah, is where I was raised. But the number 3, I couldn't even pronounce the word 3.
Yeah.
And then here I am feeling like God's wanting to call me to preach. Well, we went to bed, me and my wife, about 11 o'clock one night. And I mean, the men I was working with on the job, Mitch, I was fasting. I go out and work building houses.
Yeah.
The hot part of the day, wouldn't eat, wouldn't do nothing. I'd have them come to me and say, "Are you sick? What's wrong? Are we about to go in a hole here? What's going on? Bill, what's wrong with you? You've been like that several days now. What's on your mind? Anything we can do? Can we help you? You need money?" I said, no, I think God might be dealing with me or I'm missing something here. I don't make the mistake. I don't know. And anyway, I prayed about it and I said, God, if you're real, if you're truly real, can you make this old country boy understand just how real you are? So I went to bed about 11ish that night. Me and my wife laid down there and went to sleep. Along about 1:30, I had to get up and go to the restroom. And I remember coming back, getting back into bed. And I laid down, closed my eyes, and I kept seeing like little flickers of light down at the foot of the bed. And I thought, well, there's a big old window at the foot of our bed, facing the old Clifton Fork Road, the main road up and down the holler. And I figured, well, headlights were shining in probably, but that time of night, I didn't know why. But anyway, I said, what in the world was that? But it seemed like they was getting brighter. So I just kind of opened my eyes and just kind of propped up a little bit and looked down there. And this is the truth. I looked down there and I saw these flames, fires coming up at the foot of my bed. And what looked like a little concrete bridge, walkway between us. I don't know how to describe it, like a lake of fire with a little bridge, like a dock through it. Narrow bridge. And I saw myself carrying a Bible in one hand, and on the other hand, I was using my finger, and I was pointing down at fire on both sides and walking. And I could see my mouth moving, but I couldn't hear a word. All I could see were hands reaching up out that fire. And I said, honey, Dad, wake up. She said, what? I said, you seen any of this? What? I said, you see what's going on in the foot of her bed? It's probably car lights or something. I said, go back to sleep. You're having a dream. She laid back down. And I said, maybe it was. Then it flickering again. I raised up again. Now keep in mind, I was propping up in bed. So I done got up and went to the bathroom. So I was awake.
Yeah.
And I looked down there. And it's truth. I saw myself getting down on my knees and hands and reaching just as far as I could reach down in that fire. And it looked like whoever hand was sticking up, we almost touched. It was, can you imagine how I felt?
Yeah.
almost touched, but just not quite enough. And I felt like God was trying to show me that I had a responsibility and I better be doing it. Preach to the lost, try to win the lost, and get them saved before it's too late. And that scared me, and I knowed enough of God by then to where I did not want to be responsible for one lost soul dying lost. And I looked at that, and I got my wife to wake up, and she turned around and looked, and when she looked and I turned back around and looked, it was gone. I got up the next morning and I said, that wasn't no dream. That was more like a vision. That wasn't no dream. That was a vision. It had to be. Then I said, I ain't going to say nothing. I said, my wife, she probably won't remember none of that. I just dreamed all that. And she looked around. I said, honey, you remember me trying to wake you last night anytime? She said, yeah, what was going on? You said you were seeing something at the foot of the bed. I went, that wasn't no dream. That was a vision. So I said, God, I ask you to prove it to me. I ask you to show me, reveal it. And I felt like you have. All right, God, I'll accept it. I'll do it. And that's when I preached my first message there, March the 15th, 1989, when John Godwin asked me to come.
I think that's one of the biggest struggles with that. I don't say too much. I remember that same question when you feel that. I think, and especially anybody, but young people too, I'd ask people, and they say, I don't know how to explain it, you'll just know. I don't know how to explain it, you'll just know. Everybody's different. And then God has a way, it's different with everybody. God has a way of, just like you said, something heavenly when Brother LD got a hold of you, and you really can't explain it. But right here, That's powerful stuff, Bill.
Yes, sir. Well, that looks like a great place to stop for this episode. Thank you so much for listening thus far. We hope you'll be back with us next week, and we'll pick back up right here and try to hear the rest of Dad's testimony. But in the meantime, let's keep on making it count. Let's share the love of God with our neighbors and our friends. And until next week. When I win this war, I've got a church and a family.